Welcome back to my Substack. Today I'm reading to you a blog post that I wrote all about my favorite women's health and intuitive eating podcasts. So it was way back in 2019 that I started listening to podcasts. I was so infatuated with them that I decided to start my own, which you may be familiar with. It was called Dietitian's Dish. I did it with the co-host Nicole Morrissey, another dietitian. Then 3 years later, we enjoyed it so much, but we ended up not continuing on with that podcast. I decided to start my own, and it was Nutrition Unmeasured. All the while, as I was doing this, I was just continuing to soak in as much as I could about weight inclusive care, feeling more comfortable in our bodies, body image, intuitive eating, women's health, and murder mysteries. Yes, I'm one of those people by listening to some fabulous podcasts hosted by credentialed and very educated hosts. So today I want to share some of my favorite podcasts with you, starting with my favorite intuitive eating podcast, which there are only two, but I don't have much time. What can I say? So my favorite two, of course, I'm going to say my own. I don't still have updated or new episodes that come out. I'm doing the Substack instead. But some of my favorite from my Nutrition Unmeasured podcasts are, which I will link, by the way, below on the Substack, are Handling Midlife Changes Without a Focus on Weight, End Emotional Eating with Dr. Melissa McCreary, How Do We Know We've Reached Body Acceptance with Christina Bruce, Size Inclusive Care, Weight Loss Drugs, and Weight Bias and Stigma with Dr. Mara Gordon, How to Handle Body Discomfort and Distress with Brianna Campos, and last but not least, Why We Seek Weight Loss to quote unquote feel better with Christina Bruce. So those are some of my favorite of the Nutrition Unmeasured episodes if you'd like to take a look or a listen at those. My other one is Find Your Food Voice with Julie Duffy Dillon, just a fabulous podcast. She's also taken her podcast and essentially turned it into a book, which I will link below as well. What about my favorite body image podcasts? I've got three. The first one is Unlearning Beautiful by Christina Bruce, who I mentioned a couple times above because I've done, I think, now 4 interviews with her on my podcast. She's just so fabulous. So I've interviewed her several times, but she now has her own podcast called Unlearning Beautiful. The second one is the Body Grievers Club with Brianna Campos, who I also mentioned as someone I interviewed. And then lastly, I've got Eat the Rules with Summer Innanen. So those are 3 fabulous podcasts for anyone who's looking for some more support in that body image, in that area of body image, body acceptance. All right, women's health. I wanted to kind of just throw out there, I know my last Substack was on midlife and perimenopause and menopause. There's probably a ton of podcasts out there on that specific topic, but really only one that I've listened to and know most about. And it's by Heather Hirsch. It's called Women's Health by Heather Hirsch. She is an OBGYN. She actually I believe, did her residency here in Columbus. Don't quote me on that, but I really love her, the way she speaks, I guess. She's just so articulate, so very clear and detailed when she does her interviews, and when she does, she writes out the format for her podcast episodes. Are just so detailed and so full of great information. I will just put a caveat out there that she is not necessarily coming from a weight inclusive lens. So I just want to throw that out there. She doesn't talk about weight a whole lot, but it does come up as a topic at times, something that maybe more often than maybe I would be more comfortable with. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that she is not a weight inclusive provider, at least not that I'm aware of. So heed with caution on that if that's something that might trigger you, a talk of weight. But she's just so knowledgeable, and I just really enjoy her podcast generally. I think really the weight comes up more when she brings on certain people to interview. So just heed with caution. Maybe read through the interview, the recap that they give on the podcast, on Apple Podcasts, for example, before you listen to it if you're easily triggered by that kind of talk. Other related podcasts that I didn't really know what category to put in: Maintenance Phase with Aubrey Gordon and Michael Hobbs. Their tagline being wellness and weight loss debunked and decoded. If you want a good laugh and to learn a lot, it's a great podcast. I will say they did kind of switch, I think, to a new model where you have to pay for a lot of their content. Some of it is still free, but a lot of it is you do have to pay a little bit to hear that. Science Versus is such a great podcast, a favorite of mine as well. And they basically will do the science versus any of the hot topics that are hot now. Science versus protein, science versus fiber, science versus hydration, science versus keto diet. Now, I just threw out a bunch of health and nutrition related topics, but they go way, way beyond that. Science versus dreams, science versus sex. So many topics you can't even imagine, but a lot of them are nutrition and health related and just very, very well done. Last but certainly not least is 10% Happier with Dan Harris. Dan has actually had the founders of intuitive eating on his podcast several times. He's very into intuitive eating, meditation, and mindfulness. His podcast is fabulous, but I believe all of the content on that podcast is not free. It does require a payment. So that is all I have. I would encourage you to reach out to me if you have others that you really like that you want me to add to this list. I just don't have all the time in the world to research and listen to all the podcasts in the world. I wish I did. So if there's others out there that you love and that you think deserve a spot on this list, please let me know and I will add them. And also let me know so I can listen to them because, I sometimes get sick of some of the ones I'm listening to. So I'm always open to new ones. Of course, what I've left out are my murder mysteries podcasts, which I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty boring. Dateline in 2020. Gosh, it doesn't get any more boring than that. Sometimes I listen to Crime Junkies. That's another good one out there, but super lame. That's just in my moments where I don't want to have to think or retain any information. It's just for fun. Is that sad? It is. Let's just pretend like I didn't even say that. All right. Like I said, reach out to me if you have others that you love. I hope that you can find some good content in the links that I've provided, and maybe you'll find a new podcast that you also love. Happy listening.